Good evening. Those sceptics who held out little prospect of the new round of talks getting anywhere were proven right even more quickly than they might have anticipated when the Unionists involved abandoned ship at lunchtime. The Parades Commission's decision to repeat last year's ruling, preventing an Orange Lodge and bans from passing the Ardoyne shops on the evening of the 12th, triggered the move. The Democratic Unionists, Ulster Unionists and TUV joined the PUP and UPRG in issuing a joint statement saying they're working together to, as they put it, avert violence and destruction on our streets. With me tonight to discuss this latest twist are the Alliance leader David Ford, Jonathan Bell of the DUP, Sinn Féin's Jerry Kelly, Tom Elliott of the Ulster Unionist Party and the SDLP's Alex Atwood. You're all very welcome to the programme. Thanks very much for joining us. Jonathan Bell, first of all, in the joint statement issued when you left the talks today, you said you want to avert violence. Surely all you've done is heighten tensions?
No, what we've done is provided political leadership to a process that had become fundamentally flawed, and it was fundamentally flawed because democracy came under threat from Republican violence. Republicans threatened to bring thousands of people onto the streets. We had the threat of catastrophic consequences if a peaceful Orange Parade was allowed to return home for a 6-minute period. And as a result of those threats of violence, and if you read the determination as I have, they have very clearly said it was as a result of the threat of violence that they changed the determination, or they made the determination that a 6-minute peaceful Orange Parade couldn't proceed along an arterial route to their home.
Well, they said there's a historical problem, and they thought that the dangers with allowing the parade to go ahead were outweighed by not letting it go ahead. The difficulty is that in taking the stance that you have taken, surely, you have raised the possibility of widespread violence, and that, you know, your opponents say is the height of irresponsibility.
Well, I was on the parade in 2012 in Belfast. Even your BBC journalist walked the route that the determination was given and told us it was impossible to do. But yet we did it. We did it by using buses, and we did it by changing times.
Right. We
abided in 2012 completely by the law. The Republicans opened up with a machine gun. Now, that's not shown the last number of nights on the TV. They opened up with a machine gun that night. And what was the response in 2013? Republican violence was rewarded, and the good, lawful behaviour of the Orange men of North Belfast was punished. And we have to draw
We didn't see lawful behaviour on the part of loyalists on the 12th night last year, though,
democracy is under threat from violence, and I repudiate
on both sides.
all violence.
OK, so your major concern is to avert violence, is that right? Your major concern is to avert violence. So why don't you just tell people,
peaceful.
OK, so accept the Parades Commission decision, stay off the streets. That would be constructive.
We are talking about freedom of basic cultural expression. We're talking about a 6-minute parade. And what we are saying to people, clearly and honestly, is we want to give leadership, because we want any action that goes forward to be peaceful and law-abiding.
So you want to avert violence on your own terms? On your own terms?
We want to avert violence, full stop.
No, well,
don't try to twist words.
I'm not trying to twist your words. I'm saying if you seriously wanted to avert violence, you'd say to people, accept the Parades Commission decision, stay off the streets. That would avoid violence.
What part of peaceful and lawful action that we're calling for is difficult?
Right.
We're calling for an aversion of all violence.
Okay.
We're calling for
and that happened last year. And your colleague Nigel Dodds called for people to avoid violence on the streets last year, and he got hit on the head with a brick thrown by a loyalist.
And let me go back to where the violence has come from in 2012.
The brick that hit Nigel Dodds was thrown by a loyalist.
Why is the BBC interested in not talking about the lawful parade in 2012 and the opening up by Republican violence?
Why don't you want to talk about the fact that your party colleague got hit on the head with a brick thrown by a loyalist?
Why do you not want to talk about the fact that Republican violence has been rewarded, and as a result of that might not be the message you want to hear, Mark, but as a result of that, democracy is under threat. I condemn those who threw the brick against Nigel, but we're calling for a peaceful way forward, but freedom of cultural expression.
And what about the policemen who will find themselves having to police this on the 12th night this year?
Let me be unequivocal on that. No attacks on the police whatsoever.
Right.
They're inexcusable and they're wrong. So what I'm calling for is the Unionist leadership right across the way forward will act to protect democracy against the threat coming to it from Republican violence.
OK, Jerry Kelly, how do you respond to that?
Well, I don't know where to start, to tell you the truth. I mean, the question to be asked of Jonathan is, what violence is he talking about? So there's an expectation of violence. Where's that violence going to come from?
Well, it's a threat of violence from Republican quarters. That's what he's concerned about.
That's what he said. The violence he's talking about this year, I presume the violence you're talking about this year is from loyalism.
The machine gun from the Republicans,
Are you
Jerry?
talking about the violence this year?
Jerry,
you're saying you're trying to avert violence. Are you talking about the violence this year?
Nobody wants to talk about the
Are
Republican
you talking
violence.
about the violence this year?
Hang on. Look. What he's talking about is the fact that the Parades Commission has made a determination based on concerns that there could be violence from nationalists and/or Republicans if the parade goes ahead.
I just listened to the Deputy Leader putting the blame for walking out of the talks on the people in those talks hiding behind violence. That's the first thing he should withdraw.
But that's true.
We're not. Are you hiding behind violence? I'm not doing it. I don't. Alec Astwood isn't doing it. That's a complete nonsense. That's the first thing. Well, let me finish. All you're doing is interrupting. The second thing is that we're now told by the leader of the DUP that the institutions are under threat from the Parades Commission.
That's right.
How do you stand over statements like that? In fairness to the Parades Commission, why would you put that burden on them? They have nothing to do with it. You want leadership? If you want, it's not a fact. If you want leadership, stay at the talks.
Right.
We're supposed to be working this stuff out. That's what we were elected for. And walking out, throwing the dummy tit out, and calling that leadership makes my mind boggle.
Why are the institutions under threat from the Parades Commission? Well, sorry, what is the connection there?
The first thing is on that is the Parades Commission said they have changed their determination based on the threat of violence. Where did the threat of violence come from? It came from, if you listen to Gark, it was the threat to bring thousands of people on the streets.
Jonathan Bell, what has that got to do with bringing down the institutions?
It was a Deputy First Minister, I understand, that talked of catastrophic consequences if the parade was allowed to go ahead. So it was a Deputy First Minister
Jonathan
that
Bell,
put the institutions
I need to bring the other
threat.
people in. What has that got to do with the institutions collapsing? What is the connection?
The threat of Republican violence is perverting democracy. We have to abide by the democratic process. Look
so
at
your answer to that is to walk out of the talks.
If you read the determination is based upon the fact that Republicans threatened to bring thousands of people onto the streets. We have acted to protect democracy.
The DUP is saying the institutions could come down. Are you just going to bring the institutions down?
Catastrophic consequences over the words from Sinn Féin.
Right, Tom Elliott, what is the connection between the Parades Commission ruling and the future of the institutions at Stormont?
Well, I don't know, Mark, whether you heard me say that the institutions were in danger. I didn't. Never said that.
No, but you signed a statement along with the DUP, and Jonathan Bell has just said that they are imperiled, and he just said absolutely.
Never used those words that they were imperiled. So don't please put words into my mouth.
Are they imperiled or not? Are they about to collapse or not? Are they threatened or not? You just said absolutely they were threatened.
You have just said there that I used the words imperiled, which I never said. What I have said is that democracy is under threat from the risk of Republican violence and actual
Are the institutions under threat? Are the institutions under threat?
Democracy is under threat.
Are the institutions under threat?
I'm saying the democratic process.
Are the institutions under threat?
The democratic process is under threat.
Are the institutions under threat?
What part of the democratic process is under threat are you not getting?
What part of the institutions under threat are you not getting? Are the institutions under
Mark,
threat?
That the Unionist leadership
You've just changed tack.
Are
the institutions under
you've just
threat
changed tack after putting words into my mouth that I didn't use. What I'm saying to you is we will work constructively to take Northern Ireland forward.
Okay. And that includes walking out of the talks, does it?
To protect democracy, which has come under threat from the Republican gunmen.
Okay. All right. Tom Elliott, are you acting to protect democracy? Is that what walking out of the talks was about today?
Look, what we want to see is a better Northern Ireland. We want to make sure there is no violence in the next week, 10 days, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. People accused us in the past for no political leadership. People said last year if we had done more, if the political institutions, if the political leaders had done more last year, maybe we could have averted the violence. What we're trying to do is give leadership. Nobody has ever threatened, certainly not from the Ulster Union's perspective. I didn't hear it from the DUP that the institutions are under any threat. I am certainly not threatening the institutions the way that Sinn Féin did whenever Martin McGuinness was arrested. We are not doing that. What we want to see is a positive outcome. We put it on the table yesterday. Why not talk about these controversial controversial issues. Others, the SDLP, Sinn Féin, the Alliance, didn't appear to have the confidence to talk about those difficult issues that we put on the table yesterday. That is their choice. I said the people would not forgive them for that. We stand by that. We are there ready to talk about those difficult issues.
All right, just very quickly, what's a graduated response? You're going to ratchet things up, according to the statement, over the days and weeks ahead. What does that mean exactly?
Well, you don't think we're going to say what's going to happen. The media will know whenever everybody else knows what the next actions. There are plans ahead, and I can tell you, you will hear about them as days and weeks go by.
And does it involve bringing people out onto the streets?
I certainly wouldn't call people out onto the streets. It may, and this is an issue that has come up before, it may entail protests. That doesn't mean protests on the street. I protested today by coming out of the talks. That doesn't mean I'm out on the streets protesting. So protests can mean various different aspects.
OK, Alex Atwood, is it worth it? Would it not have been an awful lot easier, frankly, just to allow the 6-minute parade to go up the Crumlin Road and be done with it?
Well, let's be very clear what's happening now. And it's been confirmed by Jonathan, by Nigel Dodds, by Peter Robinson. They are now exploiting people's worst fears. They are saying to people across Northern Ireland, not just in Belfast, they are saying very clear, your worst fears are justified. Democracy now is under threat. And at the same time, rather than send out the message, which has to be the biggest message of all those who are responsible, be it in parties, be it in the churches, be it in the community, rather than send out the message that you have to accept the Parade Commission determination, they are talking, both Tom and his colleagues in the DUP are talking about escalating things over the next 10 days.
Yeah, but
what they need to do, and need to do very, very quickly, is say that unless you accept the Parade Commission determination, then you could lead to chaos. And unless you tell people that their worst fears are not justified, even though they don't like the Parade Commission determination, then you'll not be able to put this rabbit back in.
Unionists say, and Jonathan Bell has said it very, very clearly, this determination is a reward for violence. How do you respond to that? How do you persuade Jonathan Bell that that is not, in fact, the case?
Well, I'll say two things. First of all, I think that too many in Orangism and Unionism talk with forked tongue. It's not very long ago when the Woodvale Parade, the last Saturday in June, saw loyalist gunmen firing shots from rooftops at the police. And yet, 4 or 5 months later, a second parade was allowed up the Woodvale in the White Rock. So I think Unionism and Orangism need to be very careful when they talk about the threat of violence influencing the Parades Commission, because violence was used to influence the Parades Commission previously.
Yeah, but Jonathan Bell's made it very, very clear, Alex Atwood, tonight that he doesn't support violence, and he's reiterated the fact that anybody demonstrating should do so peacefully. That's clear. That's repeated time and again in today's joint statement.
In previous times, Orangism and Unionism have used or have benefited from the use of violence or the threat of violence to get their way. Now, this is the crucial thing.
Briefly.
The Parades Commission last year said that a big factor in determining whether a parade would be allowed this year was the quality and character of dialogue, because all disputes about parades are actually disputes about relationships. And to resolve those relationships needs direct, meaningful, sustainable dialogue. And the Parades Commission said today, front and centre, this is very important, said front and centre in its Commission determination that the dialogue had been piecemeal. That's the biggest factor, in my view, when it comes to this determination.
David Ford, as the Alliance Party leader and as the Minister of Justice, how frustrated, how angry are you at today's developments?
I'm both frustrated and angry. I must say, I wonder what determination Unionists read. Well, I wonder if they even read the determination, given it was about a minute and a half from the determination was issued before they pulled out of the talks. But Alex is absolutely right that a large part of the determination, because I read it this afternoon, related to the issue of engagement and the quality of engagement.
Piecemeal engagement, as Alex has
Piecemeal rather than
it.
consistent and appropriate engagement. And another large part related to breaches of determinations with the multiple parades and protests that there have been in the Woodvale area since last July. So it wasn't a threat of Republican violence, it was actually a response to the failure of unionism to behave itself and adhere to determinations since last July. Jonathan can shake his head if he likes.
It's just not true.
Well, sorry, it's exactly what the determination says. And I suggest you actually read it, Jonathan.
Read it in full.
Would probably be a good idea if you'd read it before you rushed out.
That Republican violence was the reason.
There is a mention of Republican violence, but the specific issues
Jonathan, David's
related.
point is that it says more than that. You're picking one
But
line. That's his point.
That was a critical line.
Okay.
We
No,
can't
yeah,
talk.
but there are other lines
critical
that David Ford
The
wants to draw
critical
attention
issue
to.
was a determination on a unionist parade on the basis of the behaviour by those who paraded, who didn't engage, as Alex mentioned, and who also have been breaching determinations all year. No, I'm answering to Mark because he asked the question.
Okay, hang on, Jonathan Bell. I want to ask David Ford another question. You said today, I think it was on Talkback on Radio Ulster, that the unionist walkout raises questions about their fitness for power-sharing government. Is that not unhelpful to be saying that at a time like this, when tensions are already high?
Do you not think, Mark, at a time when we had sat down finally to engage in what was agreed by unionists to be very important, 6 days of intensive discussion over 2 weeks, to look at the key issues around not just parades, but also flags and emblems, and the critical issue of dealing with the past? We hear plenty from unionists about their concern for victims. They betrayed any alleged interest they had in that by the way they walked out. Because whatever Tom says, this was not about the parties taking over the function of the Parades Commission to determine on individual parades, which were going to be determined over the next day or two. Okay. This was an issue about an overarching arrangement.
I need to bring Jerry Kelly back in again, because I want to ask you how you would persuade Tom Elliott and Jonathan Bell that the culture that they feel a part of and then they feel that they are political representatives of is under threat. That's what they say. They see it on flags, they see it at parades, they see it on the past, and they think that you and your party particularly is at the heart of driving that agenda. How do you persuade them that they've got it wrong?
Well, I don't know if I can persuade them, but I can give them some
How would you try to persuade them?
Well, I'll try and do it in this way, and I'll do it very briefly. We have statistics out now that the number of parades have increased, have doubled. We have that bans, loyalist bans, have also been doubled. So instead of the culture actually diminishing, it seems to me that it's mushrooming, and it's mushrooming to the detriment of other cultures. But that's fair enough, you know. See, it is a myth, and they are peddling a myth to people on the ground. And as somebody said, I think it might have been actually the Justice Minister said today, you know, you should go back to your home tonight. You know, the people who are going to wind up are working class people who are living in Ballybeen or who are living in the Shankill Road or in Woodvale or some of the other working class Protestant areas. That's what you're doing. I mean, the contradiction of saying that you're involved in leadership, you're elected representatives, you were in talks 1 minute. You were in. I've already tried that. I've already. Here we go. Here we go.
I mean, we've got the SDLP naming a play park after terrorists, and they're lecturing.
What has that got to do with? What has that got to do with Parades Commission? You know.
Well, they named it after an IRA member, and Sinn Féin and IRA were one and the same organisation, twin sides of the same coin.
Okay. The contradiction.
Former Kelly, you're persuading me.
Hang on, let him speak, and then I'll go back to Jonathan Bell. Finish off, Jerry.
Okay. The contradiction of saying that you're showing leadership by walking out of talks which we're trying to deal with the three toxic issues which people want us to deal with, and then threatening. Well, I was there and I stayed there.
No interest resolving.
Well, that's your view. You shouldn't have come into the talks in the first place if that's your view. I don't take that view of you. Right? The second.
Briefly, Jerry Kelly.
Okay. Well, if I can get through this without being interrupted, and then saying that the institutions. Right, so you're talking about democracy and yet threatening the institutions. I mean, how do you work the logic out in that? I don't even begin. How can anybody out there take your leadership as anything else but wind the situation up?
Okay. We have a situation. Let me answer two points.
Very briefly.
Well, two points. The Justice Ministers failed to explain to people why in 2012, when a peaceful, legitimate Orange procession, no matter how difficult the circumstances were, paraded peacefully and lawfully, come under attack from a Republican gunman, and the reward for that was to damage the people who acted within the law and to punish them, and to reward Republican violence. And then the SDLP, in the course of the thing, give lectures here tonight and then go and name a play park after the man who had the gun in the Kingsmill massacre. An absolute disgrace.
All right, okay. Alex, a quick response on that.
So that was wrong.
What have you done to change it?
And we will work to change it.
Let's hear the timeline.
And we have said publicly that what we did was wrong. So
it is wrong to reward Republican violence and name children's playgrounds after the person
Alex Abbott has just said that that decision was
from
wrong.
the Kingsmill massacre.
So this is the point. If it is wrong for us to have named a park after somebody who's involved in a terrorist organisation,
yes, and it was wrong.
Then people over the next 10 days have to be on the right side of democracy, the rule of law, and doing the best for our people, especially.
I want to give Tom that. Okay,
all right.
Let's leave it. A final sentence.
We haven't done that for the last.
All right, Alex, we need to leave it there because we're out of time.
There's one point we need to clear up, and that is
very quickly, Tom.
that those Orangemen, those loyal orders, haven't done enough from last year. They have engaged in talks. They have engaged in consistent talks, continual talks, and there's an absolute fabrication to say they haven't. They have, and they followed the roadmap set out by the parades.
They stopped talks in April. They stopped them in April.
They followed the roadmap. They followed the roadmap that the Parades Commission had set out last year.
Okay, David Ford.
Well, that's not what the Parades Commission determination says.
Not rewarding Republican violence.
And the Minister of Justice doesn't have a role in defending the Parades Commission decisions because the Parades Commission is the body established by Parliament to adjudicate on parades and protests because we can't agree anything different. And their rulings should be accepted just as the rulings of courts should be accepted, whether you like them or not. It's not for me, it's for you to accept them and tell Orangemen to accept them as well, Jonathan.
In a sentence, David Ford, how threatened do you think Stormont and devolved institutions are by today's developments?
It certainly hasn't done the issue of devolution any good. As we face significant financial difficulties because of things like welfare reform, we are failing to deal with fundamental issues of the past and letting down victims.
We need to leave it there, folks. We're out of time. I don't think we've seen any meeting of minds tonight. We need to leave it there. We've given it plenty of time tonight. We will leave it there, gentlemen. Thank you all very much indeed for your time. Well, he's been in